Recently, we were having some interesting Battletech discussion on one of the Facebook groups, and the Shadowhawk was catching a little bit of heat. A couple of mech commanders and mech warriors were really kind of looking down on this mech, looking at this idea for battle value, a little over 1K battle value, so not expensive, but not relatively cheap. Kind of a solid medium mech chassis, saying it's really not that good. There's other machines out there. And I kind of wanted to counter that and share my thoughts on the Shadowhawk. And there's kind of two frameworks, I think. When someone says, hey, this mech's not good, you need to look at the criteria and make sure it's the same. I love to play heavy mechs. I love to play assault mechs. I regularly play Marauders and Warhammers. I could say the Shadowhawk is not good because a Warhammer will destroy it. It very well might do that on one-on-one. But that's not really fair. We're looking at a medium mech compared to a heavy. Likewise, I could easily pull out an assault mech and I could pull out a Cyclops or an assault mech that is generally maybe a tier 2 mech. Of course it's going to dominate that Shadowhawk. That's not dissing on the Hawk. It's more battle value. It's more weapons. It's more heat sinks. Things need to be within that range band. So I find when we're evaluating mechs, there's two frameworks. What's the weight class, the tonnage, and what are the other supporting lance members, or if it's combined arms, tanks, working with it? We can't really isolate it one-to-one. The second aspect, of course, is looking at the Shadowhawk and asking the question based on the weapons loadout, what does it want to do? Coming up with that battle plan. And then this is where the mech commander comes in. The tactica of this is what this machine does. Am I able to effectively do that on the table? If I'm not effectively able to do that, for whatever reason, my own personal tactica is not there yet, or just I'm playing against a much better opponent, or it's kind of a weird matchup. There was a game a little while ago. I found myself with a fire starter, literally in a desert, nothing to burn, and just I'm kind of wandering around. So that's a bad matchup. Depends on that aspect. Can you use this machine? All right, we've got that framework, and that's what I was leading in. And I said, well, look, I like to start looking at the weapon system. Then we look at the mobility system and the armor, and then we kind of balance it out with battle value. And that kind of gives us an idea of what it is. So we've got a mixed bag of weapons in that you have some weapons that complement different range bands, but you've got a little bit of everything. You don't have redundancy or two weapons focusing on something like you see in some medium mechs, but certainly not all. You've got that autocannon 5, you've got a long-range missile 5-pack, you got the SRM-2, and you got a medium laser. That's actually, if we're looking at medium mechs, that's a pretty good loadout, okay? That's a pretty solid loadout. There's some mechs that have possibly a little bit better loadouts, but they're focused. If I look at the Phoenix Hawk with medium lasers and a large laser, you've got the Wolverine, right? That's kind of got a solid package there. So certainly in terms of a primary hitting weapon, you've got that autocannon and you've got that medium laser. That's solid on a medium mech with the movement and capacity and the armor. But then we've got a mix of long-range and short-range secondary weapons. And what this means is the first tactica of, in my opinion, the Shadowhawk, and we're talking about stock, certainly the variants change things a little bit, is this is kind of a trooper mech. Again, for about a little over a 1K battle value. This is a trooper mech, and trooper mechs are machines where I don't know the mission, I don't know the map, I don't know the enemy force. I don't want to bring that fire starter to the desert hex map, but it was a random hex map draw. Sometimes we do that. I feel like I got a sidebar for a second here. I pushed up to the channel a lot of great ways to play Battletech and explore the most, it's under the Battletech playlist, to get out of your mech collection. Often what we'll do is, ahead of a game, agree. How many battle value do you want to play? All right, let's do 5K. Is there a mission that you want to play? Okay, we come up with a mission. And then we randomize. So you build your lance, I build my lance, we show up to play. We've got a ton of hex maps, some stock, some custom. mix them up under the table and you draw one out. So sometimes, look, this is where we landed. This is where we got to do. Sometimes you get some interesting combos. A trooper mech, Firestarter is not a trooper mech. A trooper mech is one that I don't know those variables. I'll be okay wherever I am. That's what the Shadowhawk is, in that whatever range it's at and whatever target it's at, it has a little bit of something. It's not a dedicated focused mech in one of these range bands or weapon damage brackets, because you're straddling two. You've got missiles and you've got lasers and autocannons. So you've got fixed damage and non-fixed damage, but it's somewhat equal. So what this means is, wherever I find myself, if we're at long range and I'm on the way in as part of the lance, I'm going to plink away with the missiles and the autocannon. If I'm kind of running and gunning and doing a little recon and kind of got to zap a couple of things, no problem. I'm ready to do that. If I do find myself now engaged with my lance, I've got long range and short range that I can push. You've got consistent damage. There's this idea, got a sidebar for a moment here. If you think about a lance, then you put your lance down. You can imagine what your last lance was. And let's say it's a mixed lance. It's not like Fritz, I'm playing my longbow lance. Yeah, they're all going to be long range. But you've got a lance, a mixed lance. Think about all the weapons that you have, and you're starting far away. You're marching towards my lance. I got a couple of tanks in there too and some infantry. I have to, right? We're moving closer together. At some point, some of your weapon systems are going to come online and that they're in range. You're going to start taking those shots. Might be an LRM pack, might be a PPC. I'd rather not get hit, but you're going to start firing. Then as we get closer, more weapons are going to come on range in both range and damage. Damage in that if you're firing away maximum range PPC, maximum range LRM pack, with modifiers, you're moving, I'm moving, we've got range, it's going to be hard to hit. As we get closer, those modifiers come down based on range and maybe based on my movement. So you're going to hit more accurately. As that happens, other weapon systems are going to come online, like medium lasers. As we get closer, not only is the range closing, more weapon systems are coming online, like the short range missile pack. So it has this mix of weapons, sidebarring back to the Shadowhawk, it has this mix of weapons that get better the closer that you get. So you've got a little bit of an answer for everything that you can add where needed. Now, it is ammo dependent. Yes, it's not an all energy boat, and it's primarily ammo dependent. Are you going to run out of that in one battle? Maybe, maybe not. It's very rare that I run out of ammo in a battle. If I was part of a campaign, that's a little bit different. Shadowhawk, I need the supply lines. Sidebar to that, sometimes what I will have planned when I play a campaign, if I'm taking something like the Shadowhawk, I will try to keep it outfitted with ammo. But depending on the campaign, I will also have ready back in my base, wherever it is, the dropship, or sometimes we'll play on a map if I control some mech centers, resources, industrial areas. I will have conversion opportunities where I will now start to change some of the weapon systems to go more energy or drop stuff based on the necessity of that. So maybe I'll play a variant or I'll swap out to a variant depending on how that works and how that goes. So back to the Shadowhawk, yes, it is ammo dependent, but I think in a one-off game or as part of a lance, unless you're playing in a campaign, I wouldn't even worry about that. Now, how do we use this? I see this as you join a lance and you've got a little bit of extra dice, a little bit of extra firepower as stuff comes on sight, on range, and you get closer. I also see this as a bully mech in that it's a medium mech, 1K. So if I'm part of a lance or if I split my lance off and this mech is working with a heavier and assault mech, I got a little more firepower that I could work with. I got some maneuverability I can work with. But it's also a bully mech in that if there's light mechs, I've got the range and the mobility, not necessarily the speed, but certainly my speed is good enough when paired with the range of my weapons that I can fire autocannons and long-range missiles at a good range band and maybe the medium laser at a not so optimal range band, but I can put down 2 or 3 weapon shots on medium mechs. They don't want to be anywhere around that. You don't want to take those hits. Well, Fritz, look, I could do that with my Cyclops. I can do that with my assault mech. Like, yeah, I could. You know, if a light mech comes into range of my assault, I'm going to take a turn to shoot at it because I could cripple it. But a good, in theory, proficient light mech pilot, they're going to stay away in terms of the speed of that assault mech. And that's true. I won't, if I'm looking at a Cyclops, that Cyclops is never going to get into range or closeness for that light mech, unless we're playing on a single hex map. I'm kind of talking about an open play area or a bigger map. But the Shadowhawk has just enough speed and maneuverability that I can keep you in that threat range. Even if it's just iron sights, I can keep you in that threat range. And 2 or 3 rounds of shooting, I don't know if I want to risk that. So I see this where I can kind of bully lighter mechs and at least flush them out, keep them away, or hopefully put some hurt on them. A solid mech, a trooper mech, a little bit of everything. Now, maybe it doesn't have the, this has got a great history behind it with the Star League and everything, a lot of history. With the Shadowhawk, it might not have the zazz of some of the other medium mechs out there, but it's just a solid machine. I think it needs to be used correctly for what it is. And sometimes it's interesting to sidebar and framework it. Sometimes it's interesting where, well, an example from a recent battle. You know it was going to happen. If you've been listening to my Battletech tactics, you know it's going to happen. We've got open play, 6K battle value. I was throwing down a Victor. I was throwing down a Grasshopper for the Zappy, and I was throwing down a Hunchback. They were working together with a couple of light tanks, so it wasn't quite a Lance. But what we remember from the game, and I was highly aggressive, city fight, city tech, I'm blasting everything. Looking at the game, what we remembered was the Victor and that Hunchback just savaging with those autocannon 20s. I mean, the only way, I didn't have the battle value because I needed some other things. The only way it could have been more epic was to throw down a King Crab. But I had to cover a couple of different bases. Couldn't do it. I was tempted, but I couldn't do it. It was just savaging everything. It was great. It was fun. Even when it didn't hit, to see the panic was amazing. But really analyzing the after game, what we looked at was the Grasshopper was really the MVP, because it was just consistent with those lasers just plinking away, stripping armor, even when it didn't hit. Consistent pressure. It actually did very, very well, better than the other machines. So I felt like that's a good example in terms of a framework to look at the Shadowhawk, where it's just doing stuff every turn. A little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there, filling a couple of bubbles here, right? Firing away. That adds up. That's just consistent, nice pressure. But like any mech, find the role, use it like that, and it works. Don't use it like that, and you're like, this machine's awful. Or worse, you're like, this machine's garbage. Well, it went up against a heavy mech. It went up against an assault mech. Like, what did we expect was going to happen? It needs a little support, needs a little love, needs a little finesse.